purpose of the advice panel is specifically today with our reimagined theme, how do we reach more people? How do we get advice to more people? So I'd like to welcome Lucy, Mark and Andrew to the stage, please. While they're arriving, just to outline, each of them are they're all from very different advice businesses, but they're each going to do 7 minutes on a case study of how they're attracting customers and transitioning their businesses. So, Lucy, I think you're up first.
Yep. Thank you. Now, a lesson on how to use the slides.
It's quite an easy one.
Forward and back in this one. Really, really lovely to be with you today. I think when Heather and I were having a conversation about what this section might look like, and my natural passion, which is a really obvious one, is about the clients. So I obviously what I'm going to tell you today is basically all about clients and how we can engage more of them. And I think the key message you want from me when I introduce who we are is just actually, I'll talk to you around, we're a consolidator. So I'm going to talk you through, as from a client point of view, how we brought clients with us on the journey. And also I'm going to share some lessons learned, because I'm sure you want to know the lessons learned as well, and what we've learned throughout the whole thing. So first of all, who are we? We are Kingswood. So we look after around about 19,000 clients. We are a consolidator. We have 10 billion assets under management. It says 300, although actually at the moment we're probably nearing 400 colleagues. We also have iBoss, which is our brand that sits within there, that looks after our MPS and DFM opportunities as well. So we have had a really exciting time, I think I'll say. So since 2019, we have bought 20 advice businesses, so it's been a really, really rapid succession. I've been there about 3.5 years, and I think in my first week we did at least 3. So it's been really, really rapid in terms of how we engage. And what I wanted to show to you is actually just who are our clients. And if you look here, those of you that are in financial planning, none of this will be a surprise to you, but these are kind of images of all of the different types of clients that we have. So when you look after clients, as you'll all know, what you're thinking about is, right, what's the average age? What are their learning points? How do we make sure we've got the right propositions for those clients as well? And it's the same thing we're thinking of when we're going forward. I think the point on the next slide, and I'll see how this lands, when you're a consolidator, not only do you have to think about your own clients from who they are today and how we can help them, but you've really got to shift your mindset into the clients that you're acquiring and get into their mindset as well. And that's kind of really exciting and I think sometimes overlooked. So what this slide was trying to show is that when you zoom out from the previous slide, we have got some differences in terms of the clients. So for example, the types of things we're thinking about when we're engaging with new clients as a consolidator, and I'm going to name sort of Gavin and Wendy, for example. So they are our clients in our Essex office. We started speaking to them, but when we go about doing consolidation, what's really clear from those clients is that not only, do they have the same financial planning needs as everybody else, but what's really important to them is the fact that their office is part of their local community. What's really important to them is that they do certain events, that the team that look after them locally are almost part of their wider family. And when I first met, for example, in our Rayleigh team down there, a lot of the clients seem to go on holiday in the same places as well. So when you're thinking about bringing in as a consolidator, you have got to think about how do you bring those clients with you and what in addition is important to you. So that's kind of one thing. So how do we do this, I think is the main thing. So when you're looking at bringing or attracting new clients through your IFAs that you're buying or consolidating as a business, one of the things that was really important to us is to make sure that you're engaging with the principals of the firm and all the colleagues, and you're really getting into the mindset of the client. What do they like? What's the history? All those type of things as well. And you build the journey of bringing them together with you together. So it is very different. I think one of the things that I can't stress is you can't have a cookie cutter approach to how you're going to bring all your clients with you because you just think it's going to happen in exactly the same way every time. It doesn't. You have to think about things differently. And that's where you have to think about things like, how do you bring in the new branding? How do you make sure that the clients really understand who your business is, and what benefits they're going to get from being part of the wider business as well. And particularly clearly is the communication. So how do we do that communication? So from where we started off, and then the bit I'll talk to you about is the lessons learned. So where we started off is when we buy a business, as I've said, we've gone in really early doors to find out more about what makes these clients tick, and also learn some of the stories. So some of our offices that we've bought, they've been around for 50 years. They've been through 3 different generations of families. That is what's really important to them. So when we're doing our first engagement, it's very personalised to the clients with the principals, almost recognising that, because they think you're a big faceless organisation that's coming in to buy them, and that's not who we want to be. So that's really important in terms of the first communication with the clients, and that's done really with the principle of the businesses to make sure that it's pitched in the right way, it's in the same communication style, etc., etc. So a really good example of this is that one of the businesses we bought actually has a lot of pilots in it. And you can imagine from that, that's a demographic that on my board on the first slide, we didn't have actually. And apart from me kept making an unfortunate comment of flight risk, which was not one of the things, they're in different time zones. So if you want to go and think about engaging those clients and you want to go and have a webinar, well, they're in the sky somewhere, all at different times. So that's kind of one of the things that we need to look at as well. So we communicate really heavily on about kind of what's happening with the clients, so what they'll see, the fact that everything will remain the same, what we stand for as a brand, and then we bring them on through the journey from that point. So they gradually get to know that actually nothing's really changing for them. They can see the benefits, but they are kind of slowly brought on the journey. Now, the lessons learnt, we didn't do this perfectly, because that would be a little bit naive to say that we did. We measured the client feedback all throughout this process. What became really, really clear is that actually we were really good in the engagement up front, but we needed to continue that, because what you've got the advisors that are really, really connected to their clients, but you need to make sure they understand the brand a bit more. So that's something that the clients said to us that we needed to do more of. Also, the clients that we brought on board, it's really interesting from a proposition point of view, because you think, I can slot them into our proposition. But actually, over this period, with Consumer Duty coming in, what became really clear to us is that we actually needed a third proposition, and that was for clients where perhaps ongoing advice wasn't quite the right thing for them. But we wanted to keep connected to them from an intergenerational wealth point of view. So we actually stood up a third proposition to bring those clients on, which is not something that we'd had before. And I think the other thing was the principles of the business. They're running that day to day, and it's as important for us to make sure that they feel as connected to the brand so they can help their clients through the transition as well. So that's one of the other things that we learn. And we also had what you can't underestimate with this when you're trying to engage new clients, particularly of the acquisition related, get in front of them. Make sure they see the whites of your eyes. Make sure that they actually can see you, and you're not just a faceless person. I still speak to quite a lot of our clients on a weekly basis. Gavin and Wendy, I've already mentioned, they went to South Africa on their holidays. They talked to me about that. I spoke to them last week. They're in Suffolk at the moment, planning their next holiday. So it's super important, and we're really passionate about that's kind of one of the things that we learn. So I think, in summary, it's exciting. From a client point of view, you cannot underestimate the importance of really making sure you understand the clients that you're talking to. You will make mistakes, you will get things wrong, but just if you cannot go wrong, if you listen to the clients and you react to what they're telling you to really help you grow your business. And I think also, the big thing here is clients buy people, they love people, and make sure you connect your brand to that as well, so that you, again, don't become the faceless organisation. So that was kind of my 7 minutes, which I think I've hit.
Yeah.
There we go. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Morning, everyone. My name's Mark. I'm Chief Operating Officer for a firm called Latham Co Wealth Advisors, and I'm here today to talk something a little bit different from Lucy and Andy, and it's more about the importance of a COO for a small firm who's looking to grow. And now I know what you're thinking. A COO, talking about the importance of a COO. Where's the impartiality there? But there's 2 reasons for it. One, Heather and Emma bullied me into it. And 2, I'm only 4 months in my new role. So the jury's still out. I can still speak, hopefully, in a nice balanced view about whether a COO is actually all they're made out to be. Obviously, I'm very conscious that Andy's also a COO, so I need to be careful what I say. Let me get the clicker going. So, who are Latham Co? So we're a wealth advice firm based in the city. We've been going for 7 years, roughly 25 employees, 2,500 clients, there or thereabouts, 650 million of assets under management, average client age of 44. And predominantly our core focus is providing wealth advice and financial planning. Now, prior to joining Latham Co, I worked for Skipton Building Society for 24.5 years. So the demographic shift is very, very different. I've gone from sort of clients typically in the mid-60s as an average to clients who are, pains me to say it, but my age. And I wouldn't class myself as a typical Latham Co customer, but hear me out, let's see where we get to with this. So in terms of what our vision is, and I don't need to go through the words, but keeping with the theme, the reimagination of things. So Latham Co came about by 4 directors. They'd previously worked in an appointed representative model in a network. The network had been through two or three changes. There was another one on the horizon, and they took the decision at that point to set up on their own. They'd become slightly disillusioned with 2 things. One, this advice gap, this unserved market that we're all trying to sort of access. And secondly, the customers who've actually bothered to get financial advice, and we felt perhaps the service offered to them wasn't quite as optimal, we'll say. Now, I'm sure, present company excluded, there's no poor service provided in here, but across the landscape, there's still some firms out there that aren't quite hitting all the metrics that we'd expect. I met the Latham Co directors on a research trip with a mutual provider. We were in America, of all places, so listening to the panel this morning talk about how the American market is so different to the market over here in the UK. And it really resonated me with that. And coincidentally, and massively favourably for me, I suppose, we were going through all the talks from wirehouses, from the RIAs, which are the equivalent of IFAs over here. And the general narrative always seemed to be, if you want to grow as a business, when you get somewhere between $600 million and $1 billion under management, you really need to start thinking about bringing someone senior in to sort of steady the ship and try and turn some of these ideas and efficiency into execution and strategy and planning. Completely unbeknown to me, I was sort of sat in the room, just obviously deeply engaged, as we all are today, asking lots of questions. And then as we came out of the meeting, the 4 directors sort of reached out to me. That was about a year ago. I met Heather there. I wish I wouldn't have gone. So wonderful time, and that was sort of fast forward to where we are today. So the vision is very simple for us. We want to provide advice to as many clients as possible, as effectively as possible, as efficiently as possible, and make sure that we can have a diversified income stream, and that includes clients all along the way. Yes, we'd love to just sit there farming this segment of £1 million plus clients, but the reality of it is there's lots of people in that space, and that's incredibly competitive. And the other reality is you can't do just that. You need to think about how you can offer a service. So listening to Lou saying how the Kingswood journey's gone, you know, there's lots of things that resonate with me in terms of the challenges, and it's great that you've shared some of those because I can try and avoid those. Keep my job for another 6 months. In terms of a day in the life of a COO, I thought the whack-a-mole analogy was as good as it gets. I'm not going to try and look up there because I'll pull my mic off. So there's lots of things going on, and actually, thankfully for myself, in joining Latham Co, we've got a fantastic support team behind the scenes. Typically speaking, you'll have SMEs in all these areas, And all these areas are things that I've had a lot of experience with in the past. So things like the proposition. What does your proposition need to look like? Great question. Who's using your proposition? Who are you trying to engage? Who are you marketing to? When's the right time to push up on the decumulation side? Our average customer's 44. Is it really the right time to push into that space now, or do we keep focusing on that accumulation piece? The charges, which I'm sure everyone will be close to. What's the right charge? What's the right proposition? What's the right client all the way along? How do you manage the compliance around all that? Because generally speaking, it's quite an expensive arena to give advice in, and making sure that you're answering the never-ending call of the regulator. It's making sure that you can do that, again, in an effective way. The tech stack, having the right culture when you're trying to grow, how do you balance having the right culture and growing at the right pace? And obviously, from my perspective, the strategy side of things and bringing all this together. But fundamentally, and I always have the directors on my shoulder, not physically, because I'm not sure I'm that strong, but just mentally, I always have the directors on my shoulder with this one. Don't forget the client. There's all this stuff going on, the business is trying to run, but you cannot forget the client. Ultimately, that's the reason why we're here. In terms of what I would say a COO brings into this, and if you're a business on this journey now, whether you're 5 years away from thinking, we don't need to do this, or whether you've just gone past this and you might be thinking, is it time for us? The fundamental thing where I believe a good COO, and I'm certainly not putting myself in that category, by the way, where I believe a good COO can help is bringing all this together and really focusing on what your growth star, rather than North Star. I hope you can see what I've done there. Any marketeers in the room? What does your growth star look like? Now, naturally speaking, it'll be quite big, and it'll be nice and bullish and bold. The analogy that I always like to use is the what, the how, and the why. What we do, we give financial advice. Why we do it, to make sure clients can be better off and everything else. How we do it is the bit where you've got the most autonomy. This is the bit where we want to reinvent, reimagine how advice can sit. Don't just have one size fits all. Have a proposition that clients can get value from all the way up the chain. And that might be something as simple as, I just want to invest my £5,000 at the start, all the way up to, I've amassed all this wealth, I've worked hard all my life, with your, obviously, advice along the way, and I really want to offer some compelling retirement proposition. And I think from a COO's perspective, and bringing in someone experienced in this space, I can sit in that space and just sit in that space. And any ideas that come in, whether it's from the directors, whether it's from the wonderful operations team or wonderful advisors, whoever it is, I can sit there almost with a helicopter view and say, whereabouts is this going to sit on our journey? How's it playing into our strategy? Ultimately, what's the benefit for the client? And where does it sit in terms of benefits from a company perspective as well? In summary, it sounds like I've just talked about what a great job I do. I'm only 4 months in. I'll happily come back next year if I've still got a job and share an update. And if I haven't got a job, I think that'll be quite interesting as well, because I can tell you, maybe wait until you've got 1.5 billion under management before you bring in a COO. Thank you very much for listening. I will hand over to Andy.
Thank you. I echo the COO job. It's absolutely crucial, right? So what can I share with you today? Now, I'm not going to have really a lot of time to share a lot of the hows around what we're doing, but what's been really interesting for me today is listening to every subject that's been spoke about. And what we've been focused on doing over the last 5 years or so is actually delivering and bringing to life and fixing some of the problems that you guys have been speaking about today. I really loved all of what Ruth said. I think we're kind of kindred spirits in a lot of ways because we've been focused within that area, but we have expanded out a little bit further as well. So it is time to think differently. And how do you think differently? Well, let me tell you a little bit about Lifetime. Lifetime was founded 22, 23 years ago by a gentleman called Ian Dickinson. Ian Dickinson, the man from the Prue. Now, what can you say? The man from the Prue was in my childhood. I remember him coming around to the house. And I also remember that without the man from the Prue, that my parents would have not had the ability, in any way, shape or form, to draw on some funds when something went wrong. So in a lot of ways, the man from the Prue was filling this problem that we've all been talking about today. Now, granted, that was well product-led, and we're not going to go down that road. But it was a fundamental need. So we've got Ian Dickinson, man from the Prue, wants to help everybody. And then he gets on a train one day and he sits next to a COO that's actually worked in the travel industry for 25 years. And he starts telling me about this ambition he's got to bring financial services, to democratize financial services. And I said, that would be amazing, because every time I get my pension statements from Aviva or Mercer, I better be careful not to upset anybody today, I put them in this little box, and it was called my too hard to do box. Because let's face it, who understood it and who had the will or the desire to read any of it? I certainly didn't. So when we started chatting, we said, well, okay, how do we actually bring financial services to everybody? How do you? Well, first and foremost, you start off with the mission. And our mission was exactly that, help each and every individual in the best way we possibly could. But what we also said was what we can't do is dilute what a financial advisor brings to an individual, because it's just too good. So if you start yourself in that position, now I agree that technology will play a part. Technology plays a part in the solutions that we offer. But also efficiency creates a part into the solution as well, because I've never, coming from outside the industry, seen a more inefficient industry in the way that it operated as an IFA. Getting in a car, traveling for 2 hours for a cup of tea and a slice of cake to speak for, 5 minutes about a bit of business, then get back in the car and drive back. So the inefficiencies were huge. We didn't want to dilute the service, but we wanted to make sure that we could offer it to each and every individual. And it needed to be affordable and it needed to be accessible. So what did we do? We set out and we started to try and offer it to everybody and realized very, very quickly it couldn't be done. So you think, well, why is he stood here then? Well, I've stood here because we realized the reason it couldn't be done was quite simple. You cannot be all things to all people. You have to choose. You have to choose what you're going to focus on. And if history, sport, all of the analogies in the world have taught us anything, the minute you focus on one ideal, the minute you focus on one thing, you can make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. And you can imagine that conversation in the room, can't you, with a big team of financial advisors. Yeah, we're not going to focus on clients that's above £100,000. We're only going to focus on clients that's below £100,000. You can imagine the battles that we had with the financial advisors. But that's what we did, and that's what we stuck to. So we said, let's go out there and let's deliver it. So how do we do it? Well, we did think very, very differently. And the first service we launched was actually into the employer space. And we offered not just financial advice, because, again, one of the key points I took from this morning was people don't just need financial advice. They need access to all elements of what we can do. So the service we provide it's education. It's a safe place. It's a safe place to ask a question. It's a safe place to engage with a coach. It's also a place where you can learn, where you can get education, where you can try some things, where you can use some tools, where you can reach out on chat, or you can talk to us over the phone or screen to screen. But it's also a place where you can have full cash flow model financial planning, regardless of your financial situation. And if you do need it, and only if you need it, then it's onto the advice world and it's onto the advice space. So how do you deliver that, and what does that cost? Now, I'm not here to sell anything to anybody today, but I've got to share with you, we provide that to employers for a grand total of 10 pence per employee per month. And that will give every employee of every organisation access to that financial planning. And we do it, and we do it profitably. We've been delivering that now for going on 5 years, and we service a marketplace of around 1 million employees that's got access to that service now across the UK. But we didn't stop there, because the employer space is a great place to operate, and we help a lot of people. But we also delved into the space of, actually, what about self-employed? Well, let's go talk to the accountants. And if you log onto this app store today, you'll be able to download the Lifetime app, and you can have access to all of our financial education for free. So we've put ourselves into the direct space, and we've been doing great things, helping a lot of people. Now, if I was to tell you that, of course, you bring on all of these clients, then we started to face the same challenge that everybody else faced, was how do you service all these clients? Well, we do things differently. We do things very differently. We do utilize technology. So every client receives a great communication prior. They actually receive a video that's delivered by a virtual avatar that will actually articulate that individual's financial situation. And that results in a lot of things. One of the things is engagement. It means that we do speak to every client, but we never take the human out the loop. We will conduct those screen-to-screen reviews, and we will help each and every client as and when they need it with access to the specialists. So that's all been going tremendously well. And we've now been starting to grow, and we're growing week in, week out. We continue to bring on new employers, new direct clients. And as fast as we were pedaling to fill what we call the advice gap and to actually provide a home for that horrible term of low-value clients, as fast as we were pedaling to actually fill that gap, we also then had other advisors that were filling it up for us because consumer duty hit. So now all of a sudden there's a mass market of disengagement. So we opted to say, well, actually, how do we provide a home for all of those clients? And we're able to provide a home for all of those clients because the interesting point from this morning that was raised was, how do you make it profitable? I think we have money, money, money. Okay? A client can be profitable at making £1 if it can be delivered on scale. Now, I'll share with you a number today. Our current break-even point for servicing a client is around £10,000 worth of investable assets. Will we get lower? Absolutely we'll get lower because we will utilise other technology. We will implement other things. But I will echo something that someone else said today. Technology is not just the solution. Technology will form part of the solution. It will never replace the human in the loop. Where do I think we're heading? And I'm going to share this with you because I find it fascinating having come from another industry. Now, I came from the travel industry, and what I can see happening in this industry is very similar to what happened a good few years ago, where travel was only something that was enjoyed by the privileged few. You had your high-end airlines, your Etihads, your BAs. Then we had tour operators came into the mix, and they started to offer. So it opened up package holidays. But it didn't stop there, because we had Stelios with his orange aircraft, and Michael O'Leary with his taking the toilets off the planes. All of a sudden, we opened up the ability to travel to everybody. Now, I can see that happening in financial services, and it will only happen in financial services if as an industry we unify together, we focus on our area of expertise, but more importantly, we make sure that every client has the access to the right service that's suitable for them at every point in time. Now, I'm happy to share anything with anybody outside of this room because I believe if we work together and we kind of share our ideas and suggestions, we've got a genuine chance of filling the advice gap, but there's not enough time for that today, so thank you.
I'm sure you will agree they're fantastic 7 minutes from each of our panellists today with their case studies, all doing something the same very differently in very different businesses. And the challenge is there in each of those businesses. You all have roles where those challenges are very real. Some work that we've been doing, as Heather mentioned this morning, is work on benchmarking and thinking about those challenges of profitability. And we've been talking to advisors across the industry. We've also been talking to consumers. And on average, advice fees are 9 basis points up across the industry, which is a very different place to some of the other areas of the terrible term, value chain. And I just wanted to sort of ask the panel, first off, before we go to questions, we've got about 10, 15 minutes for questions, so have a think about your questions, and I'll try and work out if I can also throw the mic. Challenges in each of your businesses, and how do you sort of react to that sort of 9 basis points on average fee increase? I don't know who wants to start. Lucy?
I'll start looking at me. So I'm not surprised by that. I think in some places it's possibly even higher as an average. I think we're all facing into, I think I've seen in the press, people have kind of gone, oh, well, we blame consumer duty and all these kind of things. But actually that what we do have to look into that, we are providing quality advice to our clients. And I think what we've had to face into this, so we have had to review our pricing. It did feel painful at the time, but I think one of the things which has been really, really helpful for us has actually just been around really diving into our proposition and being really clear on what it is and how you articulate it. I think one of the things we learned is that we probably weren't, if you went to different advisors, you weren't articulating it in the same way. So we put quite a lot of effort into how do we articulate it, how do we differentiate the propositions. Which has been extremely illuminating, and clients will go with you because, you know, there's lots of surveys around there, but actually clients go for trust and relationship, which has been hugely helpful.
I mean, we haven't currently, obviously, because of the space that we're operating in. We've got to protect that at all costs. We're servicing clients that are, have got to make the most of their money. They've got to make every penny count. So we have fought very hard not to increase our kind of prices and haven't done so. We've just gone to the other side of the scale. And again, I suppose that comes from my kind of background in what was the travel industry. It was high volume. It's kind of low margin. So going to where we can actually reduce our costs has been our key focus, and we haven't to date had to pass any cost increase on to clients.
Yeah, we're in a similar position. I think in the last 20 years, I don't think I've seen, certainly no firm I've worked in has ever put their charges up against the backdrop of constantly inflationary increases with third-party suppliers, staffing costs, everything that goes with it. So I think the challenge has always been, and this is where we probably don't give ourselves any credit, the number of efficiencies you've had to introduce just to break even and make sure the client isn't paying any more, because they can't, at the end of the day, we're talking about advice gap. Increasing the charges just makes that worse. But where you can look at the value chain, so the ongoing service fee is one aspect of it, but then you look at what's the platform charge, what's the DFM charge, what are you getting for that service, what's your service alpha. You can be much more competitive without just passing the cost on. And I think that is where perhaps some of the segmentation comes in, because some companies won't be big enough just to say, we can sit in this and deal with these lowest value customers. And actually, are they really aligned for the proposition that you've got? So I think there's some difficult decisions to make. And I think that's probably within my next 4 to 8 months, that's where we'll need to figure out where we want to go as a business.
Yeah. Well, it's a good report. If anyone's thinking about what all those costs are, speak to us afterwards. Questions? Anyone? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deepthi. I am the CFO/COO at Urban Synergy, the charity partner. My question is to you, Mark. I found it quite interesting when you said that the American market is very different from the UK market. What do you mean by that? Is that the size? Is it the attitude? And doesn't the UK market get quite influenced by how the American market behaves?
So in terms of the influence of the US on the UK market, the biggest influence at the moment, I believe, is just purely in fund growth. Most funds now have got quite a heavy portion in the US. The US economy's done quite well over take the last 2 months out of it. Up to Christmas, everything was all rosy. So in terms of the impact of growth in the US on UK investors' assets, that's certainly been a positive. I think the fundamental... So just the two other questions, the size of the market and the attitude towards the market. So the bit that... understanding the size of the market over there, so the average wealth an investor has is, and admittedly I was in Skipton at the time, so Skipton Building Society was very much mass affluent, so there was a significant difference in wealth. But the attitude of the client, they are so proud they have an advisor, and they will literally shout from the rooftops. It's almost a passage of wealth that you will literally refer off to anyone you can speak to, whether they want it or not. You'll happily share that message. And I think in the UK, even speaking to your parents about wealth, and I know someone made the point earlier that they were quite fortunate that their parents had passed some sort of good tips on. We are much more of a closed book in that space, and I think that's one of the biggest differences I see in terms of how the UK can overcome this advice gap. We have to make people understand that there is advice. The gap doesn't really exist to them.
And do you think the UK market gets influenced by the American market, or is it just complete difference or change in attitude than what happens over there?
I think every great COO should be looking outside of their organisation and outside of their country for ways to develop technology. When you look across in the US market, even in the market in Australia, they've made some very significant changes. And I think there's definitely some lessons that the UK can learn from those two markets to really help push on in this space.
Sorry, I just wanted one last part of it. I wanted to know from the point of view of the customer, like, do you think that we get influenced, or is there no such, from the point of a customer?
From a client perspective, well, most social media platforms are global wide, so I wouldn't necessarily suggest it's just the US, but I think the US has probably got the strongest hold of TikTok, Instagram, and you're seeing much more marketing campaigns and influencers on there. So I think, yes, inadvertently, but If we think about what the advice gap still looks like, I think there's still a long way to go yet before we can really crack that.
Heather. Thank you.
Probably a question for Andy, but maybe for the others as well. There was some talk in the opening panel from Michelle in particular around targeted support, and I'm just wondering if any of you were thinking of that as an opportunity for your business. From what we hear from most advice firms, they're waiting to figure out if it's covered by FOS, but would love to hear views on that.
I think it probably, for me, it comes back down to to kind of one of the opening things that I said, that what financial advice does for people, you know, it really does make a dramatic difference. So when you're looking at targeted elements and so on and so forth, I think the question is, if we don't have to, do we want to steer away from what we know is great? So from our perspective is, we've always focused on actually how do you bring everything to the masses as opposed to changing it, to targeting it. I know we spoke earlier around the assumption of people like you would do this, so on, you know, and that kind of approach. And personally, I think that's quite a dangerous approach. And what makes me say that is, you know, you only have to look at the statistics in like the NHS as an example. If you're a smoker, forgive me for this, but you know, you're X percentage more likely to pass away 17 years younger. Now, if we took that kind of people like you thought philosophy into financial planning, we'd have a lot of very poor people 17 years before they were due to pass away. So I think we've got to be very, very careful about where we go down that path and, you know, don't use it as an excuse to move away from, can we actually do this? Can we deliver what is great to everybody?
Yeah. We're looking at it. We're interested in it. I'm skeptical of it, I think. And it comes back to the same point. When you hear client stories about how we've changed their lives. So when you listen to, you know, Steve, I was with before Christmas, we actually enabled him to retire 8 years earlier. You know, and that's the kind of passion, because we've provided them with financial planning advice. And it's changed his life. And it's emotional to hear this stuff. And actually, for us, I think we are trying to understand that's so powerful. How do we spread that to more people to help them with those stories? Because it's, you know, people kind of, when you talk to clients, why don't you come in? They say, oh, it's the cost. And I think Consumer Duty's gone some way, not all the way, to addressing that. But we do need to get those stories out.
Thank you. I'm going to intervene because we're out of time and we're just about to head into the debate. But please do join me in thanking the panel, Lucy, Andy and Mark.